So this is Rahul Majumdar, who is a ex-banker and the founder of Nolens, which is a film-based learning company. Okay, so Rahul, why don't you tell us what did you study and what courses did you take?
So I did my engineering from IIT Bombay, and then subsequently I did my MBA from IIM Lucknow with a dual major in marketing and finance, and then I moved into the corporate space.
Okay, so why don't you give us a brief of your career?
So okay, so uh, so I was in engineering in the early years, and then I moved to do my MBA because I wanted to get into something which is more broader, and I was not really that interested in a technical field. I had got into IIT, and by default, I had kind of chosen engineering because I had got into IIT. But to be honest, there was no clarity of career choice at that point in time. And therefore, MBA offered a lot more options and also career growth. And that's when I decided to do my IIM, which was a broader function. Uh, Again, I think very broadly, I would say that did I have a very specific career choice in mind that I would be a banker or an IT professional at that point in time? Probably not. So it was probably a matter of choice, or not a matter of choice, in fact, a matter of serendipity that I landed up in whatever company I did. So I initially joined the HCL group in the IT industry, where I was working with NIIT. I was involved in the first e-learning initiative in the country, which was NIIT Netvarsity, which was in the mid 90s, which was the early days of internet. Internet was still evolving at that point in time. And so you had to figure out everything from technologically as well as in a learning sense. So technologically you had to figure out how the web works, how payments work, how processes work on the web, and in the learning sense you had your learning content, etc. All that had to happen. Subsequently, I got into internet consulting, and I was advising a number of companies, and one of my companies was a bank, Citibank. And that's when I moved to the other side. I moved into the banking space, and I spent a lot of time in banking and financial services for over maybe, I think, 10 to 12 years.
Hmm.
After that,
Okay,
in 2014, so I had even in the middle with with other co-founders that started a financial services company, which was eventually acquired by someone else. And 2014, I started this current venture, which is No Lens, which is going back to my original roots, which was in training when I was in NIIT HCL group, the e-learning initiative. So this is going back full circle. So if you look at it, the career broadly, there are three phases. One is the IT industry, where I was doing a lot of product and business development functions. Then in banking, I was doing a lot of product and business development again, but in a different industry. And then Nolens, of course, is completely entrepreneurial, where it requires a diverse set of skills.
yeah, okay. So, how do you use technology in your line of business?
So I am a technology-driven business.
Yeah,
So my business, my product, my learning platform works on the web and on mobile app. So technology is absolutely integral to my business. I have to have there's a entire set of learning features. I have a full learning platform which is there, and technology is absolutely core to the business. So there are two parts. One is technology, which is the supporting infrastructure, and second is the content and the learning design, which sits on this technology infrastructure. So it's without technology, my product, the learning design and content would not work.
okay. So, what are the skills you feel that are essential to be entrepreneurial, or what are the skills that are really required to be successful in an IT field?
So there are two different questions, but
Yeah.
let me answer the entrepreneurial one first. Uh, so there are generic skills, and then there are domain specific skills which are uh, important in entrepreneurship. Generic skills is, I would say, uh, leadership. So an entrepreneur is typically on his own, and he has to think. He has to have run a full business. So he has to look at the market. He has to look at his team. He has to look at every function. He has to have a grasp of all the different aspects of his business. So in my business, for example, there is content, there is technology, there is films, because we make films which are deployed on the web for educational purposes. So you have to have a grasp of all the different aspects without necessarily being the expert in everything. So for example, I don't develop the technology myself, but I need to know what my technology in my business can do.
Yeah.
So, and I need to have a vision of what problem my business is solving, in terms of if I'm doing training, for what purpose, why would companies come to me, how does my product help, or how does my service help the company in their business and in their learning, and therefore why would they pay me? That's the fundamental question. And how large is that market in terms of how do I scale this business? So these are business, the vision for the business, the clarity on the business, and then the skill sets, the people, the different aspects of the business which an entrepreneur needs to understand for sure. The second part is obviously, so the first part is pretty common across all entrepreneurs, that they need to understand their overall market, their overall business, but there is a domain aspect which is related to it. So if I have to look at training, I need to understand learning design, I need to understand uh, basics of filmmaking, I need to understand certain topics. For example, if I'm making a film on training on bank, how to be a good banker, I need to understand banking to a certain extent.
Yeah.
So these are domain specific and would vary from entrepreneur to entrepreneur. But so an entrepreneur who runs an online travel portal, or an entrepreneur who runs a, let's say, steel parts plant, so that entrepreneur may have a different set of domain skills in terms of understanding steel parts manufacturing, which I don't need to understand. But I may need to understand the web well, or I may need to understand film editing, to a certain extent, So there are domain skills and there are fundamental entrepreneurial skills which are common across. Now, your second question was on what is the skills to be successful in IT. I guess IT requires a lot of technical skills, and it's a very different question, by the way, from what
Yeah.
is to be
On.
successful as an entrepreneur. So in IT, I guess you need to understand the technology, what it can do, what are the limitations, ask the right questions, make your right choices of which kind of technology you would use, and so on, from an entrepreneurial perspective.
Yeah.
From a
Okay.
programmer's perspective, of course, it's a very different skill set.
Okay. So, what guidance do you have? Actually, no, I think you answered that. So, actually, what guidance do you have for those who are looking to pursue to be an entrepreneur and or to be in the IT industry today? What guidance do you have for them?
The first thing, if I were to put, this is for students, right?
Yeah.
The first thing I would say, I'm just stepping back into my years as a student. So I was pretty confused in terms of what exactly was a job in IT, what it involved, or what an entrepreneurial life involves, right? So the first thing I would advise people is, and typically most students tend to rely on their peers or their seniors who have gone through the same system. So and sometimes, of course, the family, etc. But it's usually someone else who's told them, okay, this is good, that is good. So we were told, okay, MBA is good because it offers this career, this growth path. But we had never experienced an experience of life in, let's say, FMCG marketing or in a bank, etc. Now, the reality of working in a bank is very different from the imagined fantasy which you have of what working in a bank is. It seems very glamorous, etc., but the reality may not be that glamorous when you actually land up at the bottom of the pyramid, you know, in a bank. So the first thing is, talk to people. If you have thought about a couple of options, let's say taking the example of IT, if you've thought about a couple of options that this is the career I want to go into in IT, I would say that you first fix on what in IT, because there are multiple things in IT. Do you want to be a business analyst? Do you want to be a technology developer? Do you want to be an entrepreneur? You know, now these are all different career choices which people have, right? There are pros and cons of each of these. Now, entrepreneur, of course, is a lifestyle choice. So in terms of the entrepreneurial lifestyle, you don't have a steady salary. So you should be firstly looking at, you should have so much conviction about whatever you're doing, whatever business idea you have. That is what will drive you. You should have that passion for whatever you're doing. That is probably the most important thing you want to get into entrepreneurship. Otherwise, don't get into it. That's the thing which will sustain you. Once you've decided you're getting into entrepreneurship, you have that passion, find out more about what it is, figure out your cash flows. So if you have your cash flows, if you're personally wealthy, or let's say you have parents who have wealth, and or you already have a house over your head, etc., then it's a different scenario. And you can say that,
Yeah.
okay, next 2 3 years I lose money, I don't earn money, that's fine, I'm willing to throw away. That's a different scenario. Versus another guy who, let's say, who's moved in from another small town, let's say Aurangabad to Bombay, and he's starting a business. He doesn't have a roof in Bombay, doesn't have a large family setup which promotes entrepreneurship, and he wants to get into entrepreneurship. If his cash flows don't work out, he's not going to survive. So the first thing he has to do is make sure there is enough financial planning, and subsequent to his, of course, following his passion. Once you've identified your passion, I guess, research that topic. So does it address a large market? Is it a big enough opportunity? How will you make money? Talk to a few potential customers if possible, that what would they pay for that product or service which you're going to make. So if you're going to make an IT product, think about who will buy it, you know
Yeah.
and then what would they how much would they pay for it. Then you think about how many such people would probably buy it. So let's say each of them will pay 1 lakh. So let's say there are 50 such people, so you have a 50 lakh potential revenue. Then you say, is 50 lakh good enough for me? And to deliver this 50 lakhs of revenue, what, apart from me, what are the skill sets? Because an entrepreneur may not have all the technical skill sets for the business, right? So all these things have to be thought through, and I would say a lot of it has to be thought through. A lot of it will also evolve, but most importantly, you have to be ready for a rough ride, because there is no regular salary which is going to come, and that is probably the biggest thing, and that's where the passion which I mentioned at the beginning will help you sail through.
Okay.
If you are looking for,
So,
yeah, just to add one last point, if you're looking for a job in the IT industry, think about the role, what I mentioned in the beginning, the business analyst or software developer, and then think what you are excited in, which technology do you want to work on. Do you want to work in a software product company or a software services company? And each of them will have a very different outlook and a way of working. Yeah.
okay. So, thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Johan. Nice to talk to you.
Yeah. See
So
you.